How many times do I stop and start before I just give up? The answer is infinite number of times. Infinite number of stops and starts before I decide to give up, because I will never give up, never surrender. Hey, it's Tech. Welcome to Off the Cuff. Today I wanted to show you something that I consider to be pretty cool. My first hard drive, the first one that I bought. It was back in 2004. I was working on a film project. I needed a place to store video files while I was editing them. And so I went and I found the absolute best hard drive that I could buy. I dropped $180 on it, which was quite a pretty penny. And I don't know if you can see it very well, but its total storage capacity is 80 gigabytes. 80 gigabytes! Back in 2004, that was a lot of space. Now, I hadn't done my film project yet, and I was about to discover that 80 gigabytes goes really, really fast when you're working on film. But, you know, live and learn. Today, I keep 128 gigabytes with me just to hold files and whatever. But back in the day, this was a big deal. And I ran into some problems the other week, because I wanted to get the information on here, which still has that film project, onto my backup solution with all the rest of my files. But the problem is, all of my hard drive readers are these toasters. These are little hard drive docks. Call them toasters because you just plop a hard drive in the top and they kind of look like a slice of bread that's popped in a toaster. But all of these drive docks are built for SATA connections, which is the modern connections. And in order to read my old hard drive, I had to go out and buy one of these, an ATA to USB connector. I was like, wow, they actually still make these, because I'm not the only one. So what I wanted to do is, after I realized that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the switch from parallel to serial. If you used computers a decade ago, parallel was everywhere. USB was just starting to come about. USB 1.1, I think, was the current revision, which is like slower than molasses, but you know, it worked and you could hook things up to it if you didn't want them to go slow. But printers would use a parallel port. Any scanners were using these parallel ports, and hard drives used the parallel ATA standard. So why did it go away? Suddenly we switched everything over to serial, which you think like, hey, I'm using a parallel connection. I have like 16 pins carrying data. Why am I switching over to 2 pins carrying data for a serial connection instead? The answer is a little quirk of physics, which is kind of really cool. At around 33 megahertz, you can't push a parallel connection much farther. The parallel connection relies on all pins as part of the connection having the same part of data all the time at the same time. So if I have 8 pins, then I'm going to transmit 1 byte, and it's going to be a 101011 across the pins, instead of being sequential down the line, which is what serial means. The problem is, above 33 megahertz, you start getting very, very, very tiny timing differences, that those bits of information don't arrive at the other end at the same time if there is any variation at all in the signal path. So you have, with a parallel ATA connector, they had, for consumers, it was around 40 pins, and 32 of them were carrying data, and they all had to arrive at exactly the same time. So the top frequency was limited to 33 megahertz, and it stayed there for a while. And then the switch to serial happened because at around 750 megahertz, which is quite a bit higher than the 33, you have this crossover where if I send 16 bits at 33 megahertz, or if I send 16 bits in line at 750 megahertz, I start getting the exact same data rate. So the switch over to serial was to allow for all of these higher frequencies, to allow for much faster communication. So universal serial bus, USB, became the standard for communication. Firewire, which was used for cameras and a lot of high fidelity communication, is a serial interface. And adding on multiple serial links, like with USB 3, gives you multiple data connections. But rather than trying to send all of the data spread out across the connections and it all has to arrive at the same time, we now use packets. So we send packets down one line and packets down another line. And at the other end, each packet is read and then reassembled in order before being sent on to the rest of the computer. It was a really, really important advance for computers because these days hard drives can actually read information faster than the parallel ATA bus would have actually allowed. They only have 4 data connections. So you have 3 grounds and 4 data on a SATA connection versus the 40 or 80 on the professional ones for their SCSI drives, which is the professional controller. So the advantages of SATA just like kept compounding. One of the things that they did with SATA when they released the specification is they made it cross-compatible with SCSI, in that a serial SCSI controller or a SAS controller would read or talk to a SATA device. So you can have a professional array of hard drives, and most of them can be SAS, and then if you needed to, without changing the controllers, you just change the connection and you can put in SATA hard drives, which has helped push down the cost of data storage. The power connector, the weird thing between these is that the old parallel connectors had these 4-pin Molex power connectors, and they're really big, and they were a pain in the arse to put in and put out. They're really tight connections. The new serial ATAs, this longer bar here, this is the power connection because there's actually 15 pins. The reason is, with 15 pins, they can have 3 different voltages and 3 different lines for each voltage, which makes sure that hard drives, which need 5 volts for data communication and for all the data circuitry and 12 volts for the motor, and then SSDs that need 5 volts for everything, or the new small SSDs that need the 3.3 volts, they can all get the power they need over the same connector, and you don't have to have multiple connectors. And then if you're powering multiple devices, multiple drives off of a single cable, you're able to split the power load between individual channels. The power regulation at the power supply helps regulate and make sure that each line gets the right voltage and amperage that it needs without interfering with any of the other ones. With the old ATA or with the old Molex connectors, they were all in parallel connection. And so you could get some power losses or spikes as one drive spins up. It'll draw up more power and slows down the other drives and can generate errors. Overall, like, the switch has been one of the most important switches in computing in the last decade. And it's something that kind of goes unnoticed. Most people don't ever get into the hard drives of their computer and look at the connectors and try and make sure that everything fits or figures out. And if you don't do things like I do, where you're constantly buying bare bone drives and making sure that they work and are cross compatible and switching out laptop drive there and desktop drive that and build an array or whatever it is, you don't really encounter it. But they're an important part of what we do in computers, though I wish more or less most system drives would not be hard drives. It's the number one point of failure in your computer. But overall, I found it interesting to go back and look at the evolution of hard drives. Fun fact, this is about the same size of hard drive that the first film that used a full digital intermediate was using back in 1999. Pleasantville was the film. They didn't do a full digital intermediate, but they had hard drives arrays the size of a current modern hard drive, a couple of terabytes, and it was $500,000 for them to build that drive because of the size. There's a lot of advances that have happened to allow hard drives to be as big as they are now. I think the current ones on the market, 6 terabytes you can buy really easily. They're around $250 at the moment. 8 terabytes are available or coming available in limited quantities. It's super high data density on the drives these days, which I think is pretty cool. In part because I do video, and video takes a lot of storage. At work, I have something around 120 terabytes just sitting next to me because I need it. Anyway, let me know what you think about storage. Now you know a little bit more about hard drives and about the switch from parallel to serial. So first of all, let me thank you again. Again, I haven't thanked you yet. Thank you for the positive feedback on my new series. I've gotten pretty well overwhelmingly positive feedback about this series, and the more conversational tone, the ability to kind of have new topics and not be constrained by the need for a polished video. So I'm happy. I'm glad you guys are happy. My next video is coming along pretty well. I finished the edit. I got my transition graphics in, but I have a whole bunch of other graphics that need done, some B-roll that needs to be shot. I'm aiming for probably about 2 weeks to have it done, but no promises. Normally I try for one a month. I'm hoping this will be my one a month in November, and Off the Cuff will come out every week. So go ahead and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next week.